JWINK Reviews here, and today I'm reviewing the HP 8740 all-in-one printer. And included with this printer are the instruction manual, a quick setup guide, 4 inkjet cartridges, which includes a black, yellow, red, and green, the power cord, a telephone cord if you want to connect for faxes, HP software, and the ReadIris Pro 14 software. Now, for me personally, it's been a long time since I have actually purchased a new printer. I've actually had an HP 2710 for the last almost 13 years that worked reliably up until recently before it started having problems. So this is a new purchase for me here to replace it with the latest that HP has in terms of all-in-one printers, inkjets that is. You know, technology, of course, has come a long way since my old 2710 printer. And this particular model of printer here stuffs a lot of that stuff, a lot of the new features into this printer. In this case, I was actually looking originally at the HP 8730, which is a model that's identical to this. The biggest difference is this particular 8740 has this second paper tray at an additional cost. Now, I happened to get this at a time when the printer went on sale around the holidays for less than what actually the 8730 normally goes on sale for. So if you can find it for around the sale price, which was $229 for me or $224, it's a great deal for the printer. It's expensive at regular price, around $400 though. So if you can find it on sale under $300, it's a pretty good deal in my opinion. Now, the initial setup with this printer is actually pretty easy. I've already done that setup here with this, but it walks you through on the touchscreen on how to initially set everything up. Now, it wasn't without a few issues, at least on my end here, and glitches that I had with the initial setup. Initially, my printer could not find my wireless network right away and couldn't connect for a test for a fax. It took a couple tries to get this to actually connect to my wireless network. And I chalked that up to being initially buggy firmware, which is pretty common with hardware and software these days. You know, I found that after the initial setup, there's a firmware update for this printer that unfortunately the printer didn't initially alert you to when it's initially setting up. I think that would avoid some of the problems if it does, but it didn't. And I had to do a manual, a manual setup, which is kind of hidden in these menus here. You kind of have to scroll through the different menu options to find the setup options, and I'm not even actually sure where that is. But it's kind of buried in the options there. Luckily, the firmware update seemed to fix the issues with the network and with the fax issues. And like it is I do with all of my hardware and software that I get, and I recommend doing a update as quickly as you can before really getting into using the printer. But it seemed to fix those issues. And luckily there's an automatic feature in here in the setup that it's automatically will update the printer as well. Although I'm not exactly sure why it didn't on the initial setup. But it's like I said, it seemed that firmware update seemed to fix the issues that I had on the initial setup. Now, again, this, versus my old 2710 seems like a major, big advancement, of course, from a 13-year-old printer. But this really has some great features for a home printer or a small office printer. It does two-sided printing. It does two-sided scanning. It has an automatic document feeder here for up to 50 pages. Of course, you can see the touch screen there. As you know, which is a 4-inch screen. It's large, easy to use, and it has the ability to update itself and there's a variety of apps here as well that you can use, and a number of features in how it can print, scan, fax, which make this a really cool printer overall. As you could, you can not only print from your PC, but from tablets, from phones, from a USB device, and you could do a variety of things, including creating, fillable forms, scanning the email, all those kind of things with the different functions that this has on the printer itself, in addition to utilizing the software on the computer. So a really cool set of features that this printer has. The big difference between this and the 8730 is the second tray that's here. There's the top tray is there, that can handle a wide variety of size of paper. Again, unless you can find this on sale, or unless you really need that extra tray, I don't think the difference in price at regular price between the 8730 and 8740 is worth it. But again, if you can catch a deal like I did on this, it's definitely worth the purchase. The touchscreen is easy to use. It's easy to go through, and for the most part, with the exception of maybe the manual firmware update. But again, it's easy to scroll through and do what you need to do. And again, it does about anything you really want as far as features in a printer, either through the cloud, through the network, or whatever you need to do. The printing and scanning feature is quick. And I'll show you the scan feature here real quick, or the copy feature in this case, since it's easier to do that than showing on screen. But basically, it gives you the option to start with how many copies you want to make, black or white, whether it's two-sided or one-sided, which is pretty easy. Again, it scans pretty quickly through here and prints pretty quick as well. And there you go. And again, there it comes. Printing quality is good. I mean, I don't really have a great original here to do, and I did black and white versus the color, but it works with no issues. The prints come out here in this little section here, along with the original up here underneath, which is a little hard to see, but once you realize it's there, it's not that big a deal. I'll lift up the scanner here to show you where that's at. It doesn't lock in place unless you hold it up all the way, but again, it's one thing that's great about this is the two-sided printing, the two-sided copying and scanning that it has the ability to do. Now, for the inkjet cartridges, it's kind of in a weird spot here, but you just lift this up, and over they come. Again, you have the three different color cartridges and the black cartridge. Now, it is as it is common with HP, I do think their cartridges are expensive to buy, and they put chips in on these to probably thwart third-party print cartridges, would be my guess. I haven't tried third-party cartridges to know if they work, but that's my guess is what they do, because there's obviously chips on there. Plus, for the instant ink feature, which I'm not a huge fan of. Unless you print a lot of stuff, I don't think the instant ink is a good value. If you do print a lot in a month, then you may get some value out of that. But I just think there's cheaper ways to go with buying your own cartridges than that instant ink. One annoyance with this printer is it kind of sometimes constantly is bugging you about the instant ink, but you can say no and skip it. So I just think for the money, it's not worth it. Now, cost per page, though, with this printer is pretty decent as compared to others. The print cartridges, especially if you get the XL cartridges, last quite a long time, which is the ink cartridges that hold way more ink than the standard cartridge. And if you're still old school like I am, I still fax. Some companies require that, especially insurance companies require you to fax and sign documents still. This printer works fine for that. I had no issues with using that. feature. Now, the included HP software pretty much reflects what is the printer does here. It's rather basic, and really I don't think it's changed a whole lot on the PC as opposed to the old 2710 software that I used. Unfortunately, with my old 2710, I had to basically use a virtual machine to use that software because they no longer updated it to where it could work on Windows 7 or above. But the software really hasn't changed that much. They provide ReadIris Pro, but unfortunately it's an old version. It's at least 2 versions behind. I mean, it does the job, but again, if you're going to spend this much for a printer, at least HP could provide an updated software, scanning software. But the ReadIris Pro does the job for the basic stuff like creating PDFs and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine for what it is. But don't expect the latest to be provided with HP. Again, I like this HP, the document feeder that this has. As you can see, it works well. Up to 50 pages, no issues with that. And again, I'm not a fan of the instant ink with this at all. The printer, as you can see, is pretty large. It's about 20 by 21 and 16 inches in depth. The second tray adds a little bit more to that as well to make this a really big printer. It takes quite a bit of desk space. For me, I could not fit this in my printer slot on my desk like my old 2710, and instead it's on the floor. And it's pretty heavy at about 41 pounds. But overall, I mean, I like this printer. I think it's a great home office printer or home use printer. It has a quick, easy setup, good quality printing, quick printer, quick scanner. I love the touchscreen and the document feeder. The ability to do two-sided scanning and printing is awesome. It has a reasonable cost print per page. But again, you got to be careful with that whole instant ink thing because it may not be a value for you. You can print from a multiple of devices, tablets, phones, all that stuff. A large paper capacity with this second drawer that it has. And as I said, it's really ideal for home or home office type use. Now again, the cons with this, the initial setup can have its glitches, or it did at least for me. It doesn't initially detect the firmware update, at least on initial setup, and may require you to hunt for the manual setup to do that. It's pricey at regular price. The ink replacement cartridges are expensive, but so are all HP cartridges. And you may not be able to use third-party cartridges with this printer because of the chips that are in the cartridges. It's large and heavy. It takes up a lot of desk space. The HP software is basic. The scanner software is 2 versions old at this point. But overall, it's a great printer for home use, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars.